The 2022 season has come to a close, and all that's left of our blazing DBNI fire is this lying pit of ashes, remains from bonds of trust and cooperation that were once strong but have long since been destroyed by these 28 scoundrels we're about to name. Jot down your unholy feelings and nail them to a public landmark, because this is the DBNI Countdown Show.
You're watching the DBNI Countdown Show, the show where we review the latest Diplomacy Broadcast Network Invitational standings. I'm your host, Bryan, and I'm joined by my fellow co-host, Zachary Moore.
That is the name of the show and both of our names. Let's continue.
Well, folks, it's time to queue up your This Is Europe playlist on Spotify because it's the final countdown of the 2022-23 season. Tonight, we've added the results from 6 qualifying events: the Italian National Diplomacy Championship at MilanCon, the Virtual Diplomacy Championship, the French Language World Championship, the French Language Virtual Diplomacy League, the Nexus Press League, and the Virtual Diplomacy League.
And Bryan, the DBNI Invitational, as you know, is a year-long points competition between players around the globe from the face-to-face, virtual face-to-face, and extended deadline communities, culminating in an invitational tournament in February to determine the DBN Diplomat of the Year. On screen now, we see the winners of DBNI qualifying face-to-face tournaments so far this season. And in a problem no one could have predicted, not even you and I, when we started this show during lockdown, we've had so many face-to-face events this year, we had to add a second slide to share them all. New to the list, you'll see Luca Pazzaglia and Cyril Savon, winners of the Italian and French championships respectively.
And in the virtual face-to-face category, the Virtual Diplomacy Championship concluded with Riaz Varani crowned this season's Virtual World Champion and will receive an automatic invitation to the DBNI for winning this major event.
In the extended deadline category, the results from the Nexus Press League were added, and Josh Hennessy was the big winner. Josh will receive an automatic invitation for winning this major event.
And in the leagues category, 2 events concluded. The French Language Virtual Diplomacy League was won by 2-time world champion Nicolas Sahuguet. In the Virtual Diplomacy League, Nicolas Taillet won the regular season, and Brandon Fogel was the 2022 season champion. Both players received an automatic invitation to the DBNI.
And this season, there were 13 major events that qualified winners for an automatic invitation to this tournament if they met the minimum eligibility requirements. Dan Lester did not play in any virtual games this season, while Brandon Fogel won 2 of the major events, resulting in a total of 11 players qualifying for an auto bid to this year's DBN Invitational.
Yeah, Zach, that means that 17 invitations are available for the rest of the field. So let's take a look at our final top 28 of the 2022-23 season.
I thought you'd never ask, Bryan. Coming in first place, Brandon Jared Fogel reduced his weight during the VDL top board, making his move while the game was far too young for anyone's comfort. He'll be locked up in the maximum security of this first seed for quite some time.
Peter McNamara is the highest-ranking Australian player to never be featured in Popular Mechanics magazine, and you can tell he carries that chip on his shoulder every day, climbing his way back to the top tier of this circuit after winning it in 2021 and half-assing it in 2022.
Riaz Varani will be kicking off his 2023 season at his home tournament, Cascadia, before DBNI begins, in what should be a valuable warm-up for the extended deadline and gunboat Savant, looking for a big score in the virtual face-to-face world.
Timothy Crosby is the King of Britain after the untimely demise of Her Majesty, Queen Seren, but his reign got off to a rocky start on the VDL top board as he became the latest in a long line of British rulers to completely mishandle Germany. He's looking for redemption in February.
Hate to see it, Bryan. Well, in number 5, Ed Sullivan has been a phenomenal player ever since his divorce from reality sometime in 2021, having all sorts of fun on the board and constantly pursuing 3-way arrangements while staying tastefully distant from the number 18. I'll be interested to see how his play adjusts to the new board top format.
Josh Hennessy went shot for shot with Bradley Grace and dotted him under the table, just eking out Rookie of the Year honors with an impressive extended deadline run. If he could pull it off, he'd be the first rookie to ever be named Diplomat of the Year.
Well, speaking of rookies, number 7, Bradley Grace capped off an astronomical rookie season with a crash landing on the Virtual Diplomacy League top board, owing mostly to unfavorable weather conditions in Italy and Turkey, his neighbors. He'll look to harness that unpleasant experience in a DBNI that will be nothing but top boards.
On to places 8 through 14. Christoph Borja has us Bordeaux with his consistent dominance in European and French language competitions. We know he's one of Europe's greats, but the big question facing Christoph is, can he compete in a game that goes past 1907?
Well, Saren Kwok showed up to Weasel Moot this September on a mission, and it was mission accomplished in dominating fashion as she won the tournament convincingly. This one-time virtual and press player has gravitated more toward the face-to-face scene this year, but she can get it done in any format.
Jason Mastbaum is out to defend his title and has looked every bit the player that won the whole thing last year. Calm, consistent, and capable. He needs to shed the target on his back, but he's dangerous anytime he's on a board.
Well, Nicholas Sahu, get out of my way, juked and jived his way to a nimble French League championship, keeping himself in contention and striking at the perfect time to lock up the top board victory. Don't be surprised if he does the same this February.
Briok Thibault wasn't eliminated a single time in 12 diplomacy games this year, and he's rode a string of strong finishes on the European circuit to a solid position in this year's top 28.
It's an impressive run. Number 13, Katie Gray Area didn't leave any room for doubt in her emphatic victory at the Virtual World Diplomacy Championship this December, going +5 as Russia in the final year to overwhelm Jason Mastbaum's France. She's one of the top players on the circuit and nearly impossible to knock off a board, Brian.
Tanya Gill spent the year whipping and dipping, winning San Jose's signature tournament and the North American crown before riding off into the Peruvian sunset and not looking back. If you've been sleeping on Tanya Gill, you're in for a rude awakening this February.
Thank God neither you or I are, Brian. Now let's turning the page to places 15 to 21. Steve Personini played excellent in French games this year, winning one of the remaining French championships not claimed by Sahu Gay and locking up his spot early. Will he play? That is the question, and not one that I have the journalistic integrity or ambition to address right now.
Well, speaking of ambition, Andrei Gribakov won VDL Lawyer of the Year, but just as easily could have won Loiterer of the Year, just hanging around until bang! Nexus top board. Second place at a tournament that big is all you need.
Nicolas Taille very nearly claimed back-to-back VDL championships this month and has been virtually unstoppable for 2 years. He may not be the favorite to win this tournament, Brian, but he is my favorite to win this tournament.
Solid pick. Karthik Conman just needs you to invest a couple of dots in this innovative new alliance he's starting up, and then you can convince a couple of your friends to invest some of their dots, who then recruit a couple of friends to invest their dots. Well, you get the idea. Everybody gets rich, or at least Karthik does. My name is Brian Pravel, and I think you should watch out for this smooth talker.
Sounds like the Karthik I know, Brian. Well, number 19, Robert Schupa won't be on the sideline at Diplomacy's big dance after dominating the field at Boston Massacre, his only face-to-face tournament of the year. The big question is whether his face-to-face mastery will translate to the virtual field play.
Christopher Warlord goes full Oliver Cromwell and took no prisoners at the inaugural SpireCon tournament in England, crushing his enemies and pillaging their home centers. Will his thirst for blood and dots ever be quenched? Only if the other 27 players have something to say about it.
Number 21, Cyril Savon rounds out our French champion trifecta with his win at CDF and has been doing it for a long time. He is widely considered one of Diplomacy's greatest players of all time, but his DBNI bid is based on that one event. It's hard to know what to expect from him this February.
Well, let's see our last players to make the cut in positions 22 to 28. Matthew Frill wove beautifully decorative press at Nexus Season 7 and claimed the top 3 finish that is rightfully his. He didn't have his usual level of dominance in virtual and face-to-face play, but all that matters is February, baby.
Ain't that the truth? Number 23, Johnny Gillum has been ascendant in 2022 with top 3 finishes in both VDC and Worlds at Carnage, and he's only getting better. He's the player in the 20s that I'm watching as a threat to win the whole thing.
Jason Bennett topped his first ever board in this season's Tour of Britain and didn't look back, surging in those standings and supplementing that with solid results at Nexus and Summer Classic. Can a new Jason raise some eyebrows at this year's tournament?
Oh, number 25, Greg Matthews sneaks in with a second place finish at Nexus and not much else. He jumped in the DBNI deep end last year and held his own. Can he build off of that in year 2 and make a run?
Noam Brown came on strong at whipping this spring and established himself as a dangerous player in this tour. Doesn't play often, but when he does, he hangs with the best of them. All he needs is 2 board tops. That's all it takes to win this event.
Well, Ruben Sanchez is riding his second place finish at CMFV all the way to the end of the year and has hung on by the tiniest of threads, but all you need is a chip and a chair at this year's event. But Brian, I hope Ruben likes playing Turkey.
Or maybe Austria. Morgante Pell brings up the rear as the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing. 28th place. Can't be that scary, right? Right?
I'm sure he's fine, Brian. Well, let's look at some players on the wrong side of the bubble. Places 29 through 35 coming on the screen now. Baron Jane, Liam Stokes, Loic Borja, Ben Kelman, Chris Brand, Matthew Tottenchi, and Rony Bordvanov. So close, but yet so far, Brian, and I'd rather be on this upcoming list than the one I just read, that's for sure.
And here are places 36 to 42. Christian Brown, Zach Moore, John Anderson, Mikalis Kamaridis, Russ Dennis, Lace Arlenin, and Jackson Roberts. Zach, all season long, we've entertained our audience by reading the standings with legendary puns and razor-sharp wit.
Absolutely, we have.
But I'd like to pause and be serious here for a moment. Regardless of whether or not a player chooses to accept their invitation to the DBN Invitational, qualifying to the DBN Top 28 is a truly remarkable accomplishment. The names we just listed are this season's very best players from all of the game of diplomacy, regardless of whether or not you play face-to-face, virtual face-to-face, extended deadline, tournaments, or leagues. I want to thank each of these players for investing the time and effort for all of us to enjoy and to create a community where we can play this game we love so much in a highly competitive yet supportive and fun environment.
Well, speaking of highly competitive and fun, Brian, I think it's time for our final bubble watch of the season.
All right, Zach, let's get this over with. Here we go.
Let's.
So, Zach, it all comes down to this. Our viewers want to know 2 things. 1, was Zach or Brian the best prognosticator? And perhaps more importantly, did either Zach or Brian manage to end up with positive points at the end of the season?
Brian, let's get to it. I don't want to give away the answer, but I think I know.
All right. Well, Zach, let's take it away.
Well, on screen right now, you'll see my picks from our November show. Christian Brown dropped, admittedly, from 30th to 36th, resulting in what some would say is a loss of 1 point. Evan Baleris, great player, moved up 2 places, giving me 1 point. Very good job, Evan. And Zachary Moore moved from 29th to 37th, losing 1 point and a little bit of pride and proving that it might be a little risky to bet on yourself.
Well, Zach, that means your monthly total was -1, adding to your previous -1 from last month for a season final of -2. My season total last month was -2 going into this, so it's going to be close. Let's see how my picks turned out. First up, I picked Ben Kelman, who gave me 1 point, going from 39th to 32nd. Farron Jane, 48th to 29th, resulting in 1 point. And Roni Mordmanoff, 66th to 35th, adding +1, bringing my monthly total to +3, and season total to +1. So despite either of us correctly picking a single person actually qualifying into the top 28, I did end up ahead, and I somehow managed to end the season in the green.
That's all well and good, Brian. Really glad we had a chance to talk about that. Listen, I think the real lesson here is that it's not about...
Time for us to move on. Let's get to our Super 7. So, winning is hard, but staying ahead is harder. Here's a look at how last year's DBNI Super 7 are performing this season. Brandon Fogel joins Peter McNamara at the top of the field, and all seems right with the world again.
Well, the cream rises to the top, Brian, no matter how hard we try to push it back down.
All right. Well, raising awareness about the game of diplomacy and growing the hobby are the primary goals of the Diplomacy Broadcast Network. At the end of the season, the first season player with the highest score will receive the Eddie Brisson Rookie of the Year award. So let's take a look at our rookies now.
And you can see that Josh Hennessy just edges out Bradley Grace on the strength of his Nexus Season 7 victory. You can't neglect full press when you're striving for the top.
Yeah, it came down to the very last game of the season before we knew who our Rookie of the Year was going to be. Congratulations to all of our rookies. This hobby cannot continue without new players joining. We've seen many of our previous rookies go on to do great things.
The future is bright, Brian, not for us, not for me and you, but for the hobby.
Let's take a look at some upcoming events. The final events of the 2022-23 season have concluded, but the games just keep coming. First up, we have the Cascadia Open. So that is happening in Vancouver, February 4th to 5th. The DBN Invitational semifinals are February 18th to 19th. That is an invitational event that the top 28 players will receive invitations to. TotalCon Gaming Convention is an open convention in Boston, February 24th to 26th. DBN Invitational Championship will be held February 25th to 26th. The French Language Virtual Championship will be March 18th to 20th. And the Whipping Open will be April 15th to April 16th.
Definitely keep your eye out for live coverage of Cascadia right here on DBN, February 5th. It's a stacked field and sure to have some good action, Brian.
Yeah, and also make sure you catch our biggest event of the year, the Diplomacy Broadcast Network Invitational. Sunday, February 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern will be the preliminary rounds, and the championship game will be the following weekend, Saturday, February 25th, at a time to be determined based on when the championship game is held. Zach, that brings our show to a close. The top 28 players have qualified, but we know from history that not all of the top 28 will be able to accept their invitation. Players who just missed the cut should stay tuned because it's possible they may be able to fill a vacant spot. We are going to be planning a special DBNI selection show where we reveal the participants and the round assignments for the 2023 DBN Invitational. So subscribe to the channel to get notified of this upcoming show.
It's showtime, Brian. 28 great players, winner-take-all boards, and a lot of blood to be spilled. I can't wait to watch, and I thank God that I'm not playing in it.
Thank you all for watching the DBNI Countdown Show. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please contact us by emailing us at info@diplobn.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please like the video, click the subscribe button, and tell us your thoughts or make your own predictions in the comments section below. This helps YouTube prioritize these videos and might help someone new discover the game we enjoy so much. Until that time, have a great evening.